It's Friday. What up, y'all? This is Fine Line Friday with myself and Will. Welcome.
How you doing, sir?
I'm doing good. Where we're going to spend 30 minutes on the business. Chances are you guys spent your entire week in the ruts trying to make sure you had enough revenue, you had the profit where you needed to be, trucks were there, jobs were serviced, all the crazy stuff that happens as a leader, owner, manager, right? And we're going to spend 30 minutes now. We're going to work on the business. And we're going to do this so we can start addressing things that we see in the industry, questions that we see always being asked, and you guys not having the answers that you need. And that's the hardest part when it comes to scaling your business is testing things out. And that's exactly what we're going to be going into today is how to scale your service business. So we're going to talk about what is scaling. We're going to go into the details of after we know what scaling is, how do we do it? And then probably have a couple nuggets or a couple take homes that you guys will be able to execute. And again, at the end of this 30 minutes, hopefully be able to make you guys thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands if you do it right. Because that's what me and Will are here to do, be able to support you guys to be better. So, Will, I'll let you kick it off. Talk to us about scaling a service division. What does that mean to you?
Yeah, what it means to me is being able to take the success from one successful service unit, call it, and being able to multiply that across the board consistently without wreaking havoc on other departments, or accounting. So systematically being able to replicate over and over again. So let's just say this too. Between you and I, we're talking with dozens of contractors every single day. So these perspectives are going to come from all sorts of angles. So ideally, we're bringing together conversations surrounding the right here, right now to work on the business. But that's what it means to me, being able to replicate over and over and over again the success from one successful service unit.
And you hit it there, right? So it's about duplicating. Duplicating to me ultimately means that you have a process in place. You know what you do, when you do it, and who does it. And then you're going to say, all right, we're going to do this again with another person. And this is where it gets, I won't say tricky, but it gets unique because we all know people are different, right? So how do you take something that is so awesome? You have your one technician, so I'm just going to assume here, or make believe with me, right? We got one technician, we got one helper. He's in a truck. He is incredible at what he does. And then you get this second technician that jumps in the truck and you hire him and you got a helper and like, oh man, this is going to be great until it's not, right? Until he doesn't show up on time, until the client's not there, until you get a recall, right? He went out for his first job. He went out there, he fixed it. It rained that night. And the next day you had a recall. That is the opposite of scaling, guys. Because when you put all of your trust into people, nothing wrong with trusting people and believing in them and all of that. But when it comes to scaling a business, it's all about the process. So Will, you have in my mind made it so easy for customers to be able to have workflows. So can you talk a little bit about a workflow and then we can kind of tie that into process?
Absolutely. So workflow is really if you extract the commonalities across every single, let's say, showing up to a building and fixing something, for just start there. If you extract the commonalities between what every contractor does, that becomes the baked in workflow, and we can configure that around the contractor. So if you look at service alone, what do? We all receive a request somehow, email, call, tickets created. Someone needs to look at that and figure out, do we have everything we need? We acknowledge or we accept. Then we need to schedule it. Then the crew's on their way. Then they're there, they're done. We authorize it, we invoice it. So those are the 8 steps to every single work order. And if we can replicate that across tech 1 to tech 2 to tech 3, and they're all hitting the same checkpoints, that's a great place to start.
I love that. So ultimately what we're doing or what you're doing is you're taking what is the common practice, right? Someone calls, human nature to pick the phone up. And then they say, hey, I have a problem. I have a leak. I have a project I need to look at wherever it is. Now something has to happen with that. And documenting that, at least that high level, right? We can get into the ruts of you do the inspection and then you go back and you do this. Everybody's got their unique special sauce. But that process is kind of what you've outlined, right?
Absolutely. And there's variances to that, but those are the baseline steps. And that's where, when you get deeper, the DNA really unfolds to that company. So something like a check-in. Look, I want my tech to check in this way and to capture a note this way. The customer experience. Then from there, what? We're going to document our repair work. We're going to do photos this way, before, after, all the way through. But what we do is we take the commonalities, the best practices, and we start there, and then align the rest that ingrains into or becomes the DNA of that particular contractor.
I love that. So throughout my career, I've always focused on four different areas of the service business. And this kind of goes back to how you scale it, right? So number one is people. So if you guys have read any leadership books, people are what makes everything run. We can talk about technology and automation and AI and ChatGPT doesn't make a difference. People are the ones that are going to make the difference, right? So you got the right people and they're on the right seats in the bus, which means they're doing what they truly enjoy. It's not one owner that's doing every single job because he has to. But you got a team, right? As you continue to be able to scale the business, what I always say is whatever problem you run into, however big you want to be, it's going to be that same multiplier of a problem. So when you start having a vision of what you want to build the business to, right? So you have the people in place, then you have the process, which is what we're talking about right now, which is that workflow, right? What is the action? Phone call comes in, right? Who does it? Well, let's just say the office manager answers it or service coordinator answers it, whoever answers the phone. And then what's the following action, right? She creates a ticket in Centerpoint or whatever she does, right? She writes it down on a piece of paper or again, whatever your special sauce is, it's you guys. But you got that process. You got people where they sit on the bus. You got process, which is how those people work together. Then you got technology, right? And that's ChatGPT, that's AI, that's Centerpoint, that's anything else that should make things better, easier, and faster, right? And you talked about experience, customer experience. Like that's so huge. Are you notifying your customers? Right. And that's where technology comes in is that you don't have to pick the phone up every single time. Now, if your customer likes it, game on, call them. But you can send a text message with an ETA. You can send an email with an ETA. You can do a lot of different things that automate using the technology you have. So technology is such a huge part to customer experience and to value. And the final part that I've always tied together is goals. And I've always put that last because until the employees have absolute clarity and confidence inside what they're doing, it's really hard to hold them accountable for something, especially if the technology makes it harder for them, especially if they don't like doing the role to begin with, or whatever other variables might be coming into it. Those have always been like the four pillars of the four primary things. So people, process, technology, and goals. Have you had anything like that you focused around on scaling the service side?
Well, what really resonates, based on what you just said, is that, and I learned this early on, is that all great systems begin with a manual process. And in the manual process to start could be literally what you just said, paper ticket. I'm going to text the client when we're going to be there. I'm going to call them when we're done, right? But once you understand that, then you can use software to make the process better. Exactly what you just said. But scaling
Mhm.
up, I think step one is just getting the basics down, right? Showing up, solving the problem, invoicing it, closing it out, right? The basic stuff done. And then to scale that, it's extraction of more opportunities from your existing service visits. And then having processes that support for that. So for example, we get called out to go fix a warranty or customers complaining about a building leak and we see other stuff, right? So how is it that your company can capture that, process it, turn it into a new work ticket and keep going? Because essentially every single service job could spawn off new work. And the contractors that really understand that, in my mind, are scaling the quickest. And I'm talking, 500,000 to 3.5 million in like a really short period of time, 1, 2, 3 years to accomplish that, depending on how quickly you can do it. But you got to start with the basic systems in place. Would you agree?
100%. And what you gave away, and I won't call it a secret, right? But it is absolutely something that is unique to where in the process, not only are you going out there, you're fixing the roof leak, but you're also putting together what I call a post-job proposal, right? So it's a proposal after the job is done on additional recommendations. And you're providing the client now additional options, which does a couple different things. Number one, it lets them know the roof's not perfect. I've been in too many situations where you go out there, do a $600 repair, and they're like, "This roof's perfect now, right? No more leaks." It's like, no, dude, we're far from that. So it lets them know if there are additional deficiencies. It helps you on recalls, right? So if there is a recall, then you're at least advising them, right, that the roof's not on that side, but it can increase revenue massively because most of the time your customer's not up on the roof, right? Your customer's not walking the roof. They're not an expert in roofing. If they were, probably wouldn't be there. So the coolest part of what you just said is that is a part of the process. And when it comes to scaling service, understanding and adding that into your process. So when you do have this new guy that came on board who's worked for another company for 10 years, that only knows what he was taught at that other company, it's our job, right? If I'm going to scale my service division, it's my job to be able to teach him our way, right? This is our way of being able to do stuff, and not in such a dictative way. But again, you talk about customer experience. Having that post job proposal is a massive part of customer experience, right? I call it a trusted advisor, where I'm up on that roof helping you make decisions to be able to run your business, not to sell your roof repairs. So I love that piece because like things like that are what make multi-million dollar service divisions, like you said.
No question. And why, why want to scale service? And you ask that question, and it's a big challenge, right? And it's not an easy thing to process a high volume of work orders unless you see the long-term value. And what's the long-term value that everybody's saying? They It's not just the shiny new thing in the room. It's not even new. It's everyone's been doing service for a long time. Not everybody, but it's been around for a long time.
Right after the
But
first roof was installed is when
yeah,
service started.
exactly. But it's about customer retainage, right? And it's about having predictability in your revenue, retaining clients and being able to do the right thing, manage their assets, help them navigate their roofing decisions. And as a byproduct, sales are really automatic, and sales feed the sales division. You take it one layer above what we're just talking about. So basic processes. Now I'm extracting more sales opportunities from existing service jobs. One step further is I have a sales effort to some degree in place. How do I feed service? And vice versa. Because to me, it's about a service sales integration. And how do you best kind of pull that off? And you've been in that spot
Yeah.
before.
Um, I have. I have. And when you're talking about growing service, to me, they're one and the same. Sales and service is one inside the same. Because you already said it, every service ticket can result inside an additional sales opportunity. Because if you're up on that roof and you're seeing additional deficiencies above what you're doing, I feel it's within my integrity to be able to advise the client, right? It's negligent of me to be able to see a puncture on the other side of the roof and be like, well, I'll see him next week when it leaks.
Yeah.
Like that just goes against everything that I've ever done. So there's that part of it. But sales is a massive, massive part of the business. And even we'll talk about like NTE increases, so a not to exceed. So when you work with a customer that I would call a little bit more of a professional buyer, they'll give you a not to exceed, which means go out there, fix the leak, but don't go over 500 bucks. Don't go over 700, 1,000, whatever it is, right? Don't go over this dollar amount. And a really, really big part of scaling your business is understanding that's a tolerance that they're saying, call me, let me know if it's going to be more than this. And what I see most contractors think of when they see an NTE is, oh, that's as much as they want to spend. And that's not the case at all. That's just a tolerance that they've defined where they need to make a decision on what they're going to do. Sometimes it's, and I want to say this in a mean way because the property manager sees it, sometimes it's the power side. I've been with clients that give me a $300 NTE, right? And I know what you guys are thinking. It's like, I won't even start my truck for 300 bucks. Well, I hear you. They paid for me to get on site and find the issue. I'll tell you, I had 100% approval process or approval rating for what I found. They just wanted to be educated on it, which again ties back to the process. That if I have a $500 NTE and I need to get an increase, number one, and I think we talked about this inside a different training we did, is my technician able to call the client? If not, then you have to have a salesman tied into that, which is going to notify the client, request the NTE increase while the technician's doing the work. I'm getting deeper into the weeds on the process, but again, Will, you talked about the 1 to 3 million. I'll take it further and say the 5 to 7 million are doing that.
Yeah.
They have their sales rep tied into it. So they know exactly what the value is. They know exactly what their tolerance is on what they can or can't approve. That's when you start getting deeper into this. And that's when the process keeps building, right? We start off and we have one truck, we're sitting right here. And by the end of it, we got 20 trucks. But in order to be able to even have two, you got to have something that you can duplicate. I think it all goes back to that process.
No question. And you got to have it and have a starting point. And as it matures, additional layers will be attached to what you've already built. So, and even on the client side too, there's a ladder that exists on the client side to the levels that they climb as they interact with your business more and more. Could have started with that $300 not to exceed. Next thing you know, there's a large scope that you need to do. It gets approved. Next thing you know, you're now inspecting the rest of the building and working deeper with that client and managing that asset. So there's levels to that. As you scale service up, the processes scale up alongside, and then so do the clients with you, ideally. So when I ask the question, why even scale up service, I ask it because anyone that wants to do more service should figure out why they want to do that. Is it because I just want to do more service to get my name out more? Is it because everyone's talking about it? Is it because there's higher margins? Answer that and then attack. So the reality is no one's getting rich off of leak calls, T&M work orders. There's a fixed amount of margin you're going to make. You can work more hours, you go overtime, it's even harder, right? But where you see the results is having the continual extraction of more sales opportunities, and that's what I think people are after. And how do you get there? Is the question.
I agree. So typically this is what I hear. Number one, I want to get away from new construction, which is an indirect way of saying I want to do more private negotiated re-roofs. The hardest part about private negotiated re-roofs is that if you call telemarketing, pay a lead source, wherever it is, and they find one, your customer has already made the choice to replace the roof. Because if they're telling you they're replacing the roof, they've already made that choice, which means they've already had some type or multiple failures or problems where they say, you know what, screw this, we're replacing it, the problem's not worth it anymore. Indirectly, what I'm telling you is you're the second or third bidder. So you got to do something better than the primary that came in and help them reach that decision to say, hey, I think it's time to replace the roof. He goes, no problem. I need 3 bids. All right, here's my primary bid, number 1. He's looking for number 2 or 3. Service breaks through that. Because if you're there and you're seeing these leaks happen and you're seeing the, deterioration of this roof, you're the one having the conversation. You are number 1, and 2 and 3 are coming behind you now. So it definitely flips that side. You talked about profitability. Service can be one of the most profitable things you're going to do, but much like you said, the average leak call is in the $900, the time and material side. And yes, it's coming at a 55+% gross profit margin. It should, right? Your contract 60, 65, but those are going to average probably around your 3 to 5,000. So it's not your $300,000 commercial roof. So you really had to, and I love that part. You got to ask yourself what it's about. And I'll tell you, a side that I've always loved is the data. And it's probably one of the most missed things that are captured, because every single roof that you guys step on, you're capturing information. And you might just say it's a proposal. You might just say it's an inspection. You might be able to commoditize to be able to say they're either going to award it or they're not going to award it. But when you break it down, what you're able to do, and this is a scale strategy, this is a massive scale strategy, is when it rains on Tuesday, I can go in to Centerpoint. I can go into my inventory repairs. I can look at every emergency deficiency that is active. Now I'm strategically calling customers because I know that they have emergency deficiencies, which means less water into the building, which means there's not a greater chance that it's leaking than right now. That is using data. Or every single section that we've inspected, pulling up a projected replacement date to be able to say, I want to know all of the roofs that need to be replaced inside 2026. Because you've inventoried all of those roofs, you've inspected all of those roofs. Now you have a list of roofs that are projected to be replaced inside 2025 or 2026, whatever it is. And guess what? If they don't replace it, it's an awesome service candidate. So it's no longer dart on a dartboard. I've always been heavy on the data side because there's so much information that's being captured through all of the applications and technology, right, that you're entering everything into. If we learn how to use that data to extract it and then have the people process in line, right, the people in the right seats, and then the process of how they work together, like that's when things truly take off. That's when it gets fun.
Absolutely. And that's where I have the most amount of fun is being able to really scale up through strategic initiatives where it's right in front of you. You may just be doing all these site visits and reacting, but if you capture all of that, it puts you in a good position moving forward. But I like what you said about motives to want to maybe go away from new construction or bid work or whatever it is into the negotiated market. But to get to the negotiated market, it's not just finding what all the re-roof bids are to bid against. Imagine if every building you got on, you were to put an expectancy of life to it. And let's say out of that pile, you've got all these buildings that are 15 years old, the roofs that are 15 years old. And then you manage the service relationship for 5 years. That's going to put you in the best position. So not just showing up at the very end of the life expectancy, but if you can get there even from the beginning all the way through, and that's why we talk about life cycle so much, it's because it's about managing the entire lifespan of that roof system. But it puts you in so much of a better position. I love what you did with, all right, it's raining on Tuesday. I'm going to check my board for all emergency repairs, which means you've identified previously, whether sales guys or service guys, you've previously identified areas of roofs that have deficiencies that are allowing water to get into the building. It's the perfect time to follow up on and call. And in a perfect world, you're ahead of it too. You've already given that customer that post-job proposal. You've had conversations around it. I think that's kind of like the first step. The second step is doing the full analysis, the full inspection of the building. And not just doing the inspection, but reviewing it with a decision maker. You could do free inspections all day, every day. But if you don't have the time to sit down with a decision maker and then plan out what we're going to do with this information, that's where I see large amounts of scaling is when they execute all that properly.
And dude, that's the first thing. And I promise you, there's going to be a few people watching this, and it's like that's why Chad asked the question. Whenever I'm working with contractors and I see an inspection show up on the dispatch board, and then I always look at the property. and it's this massive property. Okay. I instantly think in my head, how are they using this data? And if we don't know how they're going to use this data, like I stop that inspection. Because number one, it's going to take a day for me to get out there to do the inspection. That's fine. But are we doing this to be able to create a 50-page report that looks pretty to be able to see if they're going to buy the puncture, right? Or are we creating like a multi-year budget? Because the reports have so much power, but they're so underutilized inside how that data is transferred, right? Transfer to the customer to be able to say, I can set you up on a 3-year service plan. I can put you on a 5-year capital plan, right? To where we can start helping them. And those are the one thing, like those are the things that, like, that's my pain point. If you guys can't tell, like that's
Yeah.
the salt in the wound. It's like you do this massive inspection, and you do the massive inspection to be able to sell repairs. It's like, no, no, we don't. The repairs will come with it, but we have to be able to understand, obviously the client's pain point, the client's sensitivity per sections, so we can understand, right, how he's going to allocate the money. Most of the time, they're not going to have enough money. And I know we're jumping into the sales side, but this is a massive part of growing your service division, because you can't just go out and hunt all day long, because you will hit your glass ceiling where you don't have any more time inside the day, where you don't have any more energy, or you don't have enough money to be able to buy a new truck. And that to me is where efficiency and process comes in, because if we keep duplicating a bad plan, it's going to fail. So really, really getting in and figuring out that process, I feel, is the massive, massive part.
It is, and it's about the long haul too. It's not the immediate solve of anything. The people that do the best service parts I've ever seen, understand it's a long game. I'm not trying to sell one job and be done with it. It's like I understand the long game, I embrace the long game, and our whole department is structured around the long game. And how do you perfect that to the best that you can do that? Well, that ties in the sales efforts, that ties in the client expectations, that ties in how they're going to use the data, that ties in how you're going to run. And I like what you, because I always thought of it as a service sales integration, but you're thinking of it as like it's one and the same. And I guess they're both true because they both support each other, and I feel for the contractors where that production division, that estimating division, so separate, because that there's a bunch of different variations in the models, but the estimating is separate. So what happens when you encounter this replacement opportunity? Then I got to send it over there. Are they going to take care of my customer right? In how do you bring that into the business? And I guess that changes, right?
Um, and in my world, we as a company, we have one thing to accomplish, right? What's the one thing that we want to accomplish? Is it revenue? Is it profitability? Is it percentage of growth? I mean, I don't it doesn't make a difference what it is. We're all in this together, right? There's no point that we're going to take a phone call and convince someone to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on the roof. The problem's got to be big enough for him to be able to do that, right? So when we get into the nuts and bolts of it, the salesmen make a promise, your production team has to deliver on that promise.
Mm-hmm.
So both sides have to win. It doesn't matter if it's service, it's a re-roof, or you're doing an inspection. It's really, really important that that communication all works together. Because again, you give me an inspection to go do, my response is going to be, why am I doing this inspection? Well, they have leaks over this area. Okay, how are what about the other sections? Oh, they just want to be able to understand what's on there. Okay, do they have a budget? Right? Are they going to submit this for a budget? It's really getting deep into that, to where your service team can truly support and increase the amount of sales that your salesmen can make by getting them better information and more accurate information specifically for what that client's trying to achieve. And
And
again, if you want to
often,
know where that's at, that's your, like, $5+ million contractors where it works. It's
yeah,
one synced process.
and it's about slowing down too. So normal gut reaction is to, all right, I got to go do this inspection. But if you slow down and you ask the questions that you just asked, you end up with better sales opportunity, better customer, more clarity, right? And that's what service is about. It's not about banging out squares. It's about slowing down, being a bit more methodical, strategic, and customer service oriented. At the end of the day, like that's what I use the service department for, is like that's my customer service department. And everything kind of comes from that, right?
I have won so many replacement projects because anybody who says they're replacing a roof, to me, I automatically assume that they have leaks that are bad enough that they're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to be able to say, "Hey, I'm done with this." Right? So I'm naturally inquisitive. You're replacing the roof, like, holy crap, that's a big job. What led you to think that you need to replace the roof?
Yeah.
Right? So I'm being inquisitive on it. But the real win from this is, what are you doing between right now and when the project is done? Because typically on a re-roof sale, if I walk in right now and they say, I'm looking at replacing my roof, I go do my survey, I come back, I estimate it, I get the proposal, I deliver the proposal. Average time on that is 3 weeks, by the way. So you get the proposal to them. Then what's the time frame that you gave them the proposal to when they actually awarded it? That's 90 plus days typically on a capital side. So we're talking ultimately about 4 months, 5 months, right? And if you guys are shorter or longer, game on. But that's the duration that your client has to deal with their problems before they're fixed. So just because you walk in and someone says they have a roof replacement, okay, that's cool. What led you to think that? We got leaks all over the building. And you get out there and you're like, they got to do it. There's leaks all over the building. Use service. Get out there, temporarily stop the leaks. That's the customer experience side. You guys are superheroes. Not only are you billing for service, you're also putting yourself in a better spot to be able to win the capital projects. So if you don't have service integrated into every single re-roof that you have quoted or that you're working on, again, there's a gap inside that service scalability process.
Absolutely. You hit it right there on the head. And that goes back to the really the why are we doing this? You know, and I think the motives are across the table, but using what works for one and then multiplying is the entry. I'm summing up our conversation, so pardon me, but starting with just one and having that standardized process. All right, we're checking in the right way, we're documenting our repairs the right way, I'm invoicing these the right way, I'm not getting callbacks. Great. Now I'm going to add more crews, right? And from there, I'm going to then lean on my crews to extract more information for me. And then I'm going to bring in account managers or inspectors or salespeople to help manage this. And that's where you start to escalate over and over and over again. And along the way, you're understanding your DNA and how you take care of customers. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's where we get the 5 plus.
Yeah. Yes, yes, yes. So I have a few different topics submitted for 2025 for some of the larger expos conferences. One of them is 0 to 1. Okay, 0 to 1 means 0 trucks to 1 truck. That has everything to do with mindset. You have to think service before you can be service, right? You can't just put a truck and say I'm a service company. It doesn't work like that. You got to be able to think service first, right? You get everything we're going into, just like the example we defined. 0 to 1, I'm not going to call it easy, but it's a mindset. 1 to 2, that's process. You have to have something to be able to duplicate. Now, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, all that kind of different stuff. You're not doing the same thing as 1 to 2, but 1 to 2 is possibly one of the hardest things that you'll do if you don't have your workflow down, if you don't have the right people inside place, you don't have the right technology that's making it better, easier, and faster, because your problems you're just going to duplicate. They're going to get twice as big because you have twice as many invoices, twice as many dispatches, twice as many recalls, right? Twice as many people to be able to process payroll for. So those are the things that always come into when you're growing or scaling service. You got to have those things down because 2 to 3 or 0 to 1 mindset, 1 to 2 process.
Yeah, love that. You've been doing so much work on that side, and they're very different. Zero to one, very different than 5 plus, and to each their own. But having that kind of mapped out and defined, it's not like you have to reinvent the wheel too. So all this is documented, and all this is so much more accessible than it was 5, 10 years ago. which is the really cool thing. So now we take what we've learned along the years, we try to standardize it even further while incorporating best practices and always staying in tune with best practices. And I love what we're doing because you're doing it at the contractor level by working shoulder to shoulder with them in the business. I'm supplying software and trying to keep an ear on what best practices are to further better the software. And Fine Line Fridays is where it all kind of comes together. We can talk about this stuff. So I love these, and I think that's all what it's all about.
That's right. So if you're in Center Point, just go down and just hit inventoried repairs, look for your emergencies. And if it's raining by you guys, if you guys are dealing with this hurricane or the rain that's sweeping through inside there, the pain will never be bigger for your customer than when the water is coming in the building, right? Use technology to be able to help you get the process outlined. So I love
No
these.
question.
I appreciate it. Thank you for letting me be part of them.
You as well. You as well. We will catch you on the flip side, man. 2 Fridays from now.
That's right. See ya.
See ya.